This story is from the movie titled The Possession 2009. This is based on a true story. Sit back and enjoy watching. Em becomes uncomfortable in her throat. She turns on the flashlight to check. She sees 2 fingers seemingly sticking out from it. But when she calms down and checks again, everything appears normal. The story begins with a mysterious antique wooden box. An elderly woman panics, holding a hammer. She appears terrified of the wooden box. But she musters the courage to smash the box. However, before she could destroy it, her entire body starts shaking uncontrollably. Half of her face begins to rot grotesquely. A mysterious force hurls her to the ground. She convulses violently, thrashing around the room. The chaos continues until she finally collapses. When her son returns, he finds her unconscious on the floor. Alarmed by the bizarre incident, the son decides to sell the wooden box at a yard sale. Clyde, recently divorced, happens to pass by the sale with his daughters, Em and Hannah. Em is immediately drawn to the wooden box and asks her dad to buy it for her. Em becomes attached to the box and keeps it closed at all times. However, the box doesn't appear to have a keyhole or an obvious way to open it. One night, Em is awakened by strange whispering sounds. She gets out of bed and follows the noises to the box. The sound seems to come from within the box. Upon examining it closely, Em discovers a hidden latch and manages to open it. Inside, she finds strange items: a dried moth, a human tooth, and an antique ring. Em inspects the items curiously. She tries on the ring and wears it proudly. Feeling pleased, she clutches the box tightly and falls asleep. Unbeknownst to her, something sinister is beginning to unfold. The next day, Em starts exhibiting unusual behavior. She sits staring at the box, completely motionless. Her eyes glaze over eerily. Clyde notices something strange about her reflection in the mirror. He rushes to her, snapping her out of the trance. This breaks the odd spell she seems to be under. Just as Em goes downstairs to eat, another strange event occurs. Em, seemingly emotionless, starts shoveling food into her mouth at an unnatural pace. Clyde tells her to slow down. In response, Em stabs Clyde's hand with a fork, shocking everyone. She snaps out of her trance immediately and looks horrified at what she's done. Em appears confused, as if she doesn't recall her actions. Later that night, while Em sleeps, the mysterious wooden box creaks open on its own. Moths begin emerging from the box. Meanwhile, upstairs, Hannah is brushing her teeth in the bathroom. A moth lands on her head, startling her. When Hannah opens the bathroom cabinet, an entire swarm of moths bursts out, filling the room. Screaming, Hannah runs out of the bathroom. Clyde hears the commotion and runs to see what's happening. He opens Em's door. What he sees terrifies him. The room is filled with swirling moths, while Em sits on her bed, clutching the box tightly with a vacant expression. The next day, Clyde calls pest control for help. However, the exterminators are baffled as they can't figure out where the moths are coming from. Over the next few days, Em's behavior becomes increasingly strange. One night, she looks in the mirror. The antique ring on her finger seems to tighten, causing her finger to swell painfully. Suddenly, she feels a terrible discomfort in her throat. Using a flashlight, she peers into her mouth. To her horror, she sees fingers moving inside her throat. The following day at school, a mischievous boy notices Em's wooden box in her bag. While Em is distracted, he steals the bag. Realizing what has happened, Em, usually calm and gentle, flies into a terrifying rage. She attacks the boy violently, screaming. She repeatedly shouts at him to return her bag. Luckily, a teacher intervenes before things get worse. Following the incident, the school calls Em's parents to discuss her behavior. The teacher claims Em is showing signs of violent tendencies. She suggests that the wooden box be kept at school for safety reasons. Later that night, the teacher is alone at school, grading papers. Unbeknownst to her, danger is near. She hears strange noises coming from the box. Curious, she takes a knife and attempts to pry the box open. Suddenly, a chilling wind sweeps through the room. Blood begins to pour from her eyes. Panicked, she tries to flee. But the door slams shut, trapping her inside. Moments later, an unseen force slams her against the wall, killing her instantly. Following the teacher's mysterious death, the school remains closed the next day. When Clyde and Em talk later, Em confesses that she believes a friend lives inside the wooden box. She pleads with Clyde to retrieve it from school. Clyde starts to connect Em's strange behavior with the box. He retrieves the box and throws it into a nearby dumpster. When Em asks about the box, Clyde lies and says the police confiscated it. Em is visibly heartbroken. She senses her father's deceit. She accuses Clyde, hinting at the divorce being his fault. Clyde is deeply hurt by her accusations. Suddenly, Em is slapped across the face. But Clyde didn't touch her, an unseen force did. Hannah, standing behind, witnesses the incident in shock. Em runs out of the house, seemingly guided by an unseen force, and retrieves the wooden box from the dumpster. She places the box on the ground. A cloud of moths emerges from the box. A sinister voice whispers to her, promising to stay with her forever. The moths suddenly swarm into Em's mouth. She collapses unconscious. Clyde arrives just in time and rushes Em to the hospital. However, Clyde is mistakenly accused of abusing Em. Stephanie, Clyde's ex-wife, angrily shows up with a lawyer. Clyde loses custody of Em, and she goes home with Stephanie. Even after being discharged, Em's condition worsens. Her behavior becomes more alarming. Her face contorts unnaturally at times. Desperate, Clyde takes the box to a university professor for answers. The professor explains that the inscriptions on the box are in ancient Polish. He identifies the box as a Dybbuk Box, which houses a malicious spirit. He confirms that Em is likely possessed by this spirit. Determined to prove it, Clyde sneaks into Stephanie's house that night. He quietly reads passages from the Bible near Em. As anticipated, Em reacts violently, convulsing and screaming as the spirit is agitated. Stephanie hears the commotion. She bursts in and forces Clyde to leave, furious at his intrusion. Clyde becomes determined to save his daughter. He begins searching desperately for someone who can perform an exorcism. Eventually, he finds a group of Hasidic Jewish exorcists willing to help. Tzadok, the lead exorcist, explains that the spirit is an ancient demon called a Dybbuk. The Dybbuk preys on innocent children, attempting to fully possess them. It isolates its host by driving away loved ones. Its ultimate goal is to completely take over the host's body. Clyde pleads with Tzadok to help save him. At first, Tzadok is hesitant. He explains that knowing the Dybbuk's name is crucial to banishing it. Without the name, even the most powerful rituals will fail. Frustrated, Clyde leaves with the Dibbuk Box. Luckily, Tzadok changes his mind and agrees to help. He promises to do everything he can to save him. On their way back to the hospital, Tzadok examines the Dibbuk Box and breaks a hidden compartment. Inside, he finds an inscription revealing the demon's name, Abazu. Meanwhile, Stephanie finds him crouched in a corner acting strangely. Stephanie is horrified to see him chewing on what looks like raw meat. Em suddenly bolts outside in a panic. Her stepfather, Brett, arrives home and tries to intervene. Em glares at Brett with a cold, unnatural intensity. Suddenly, a gust of wind slams into Brett. He starts coughing and choking violently, spitting up blood. Moments later, Brett realizes his teeth are falling out. Terrified, Brett flees to his car and drives away. Em collapses to the ground, unconscious. Stephanie rushes to Em's side and calls for help. Later at the hospital, an MRI scan reveals a horrifying image inside Em's body. The scan clearly shows a humanoid figure curled up inside Em's stomach. Stephanie is terrified and begins to panic. She screams in disbelief. How is this even possible? Clyde arrives at the hospital with Tzadok, determined to save him. Following Tzadok's instructions, they take him to an open space for the exorcism ritual. Tzadok begins the ancient ritual, chanting prayers in Hebrew. The intensity of the ritual leaves Tzadok exhausted. Yet, the demon does not immediately manifest. Suddenly, water nearby begins to boil violently. In an instant, Em leaps up and attacks Tzadok, pinning him to the ground. Em lets out a guttural scream before running off into the night. Clyde chases after her, desperate to stop her. In the dim light, Clyde spots Em standing eerily still. He cautiously approaches her. To his shock, Em disappears right before his eyes. Clyde frantically looks around. Suddenly, a drop of blood lands on his hand. He looks up to see Em clinging to the ceiling like a predator. Tzadok arrives just in time with his tools. Em seems to calm down, appearing normal again. It appears the Dybbuk has been exorcised. However, Tzadok senses something is wrong. He wonders aloud, where did the Dybbuk go? He repeats the demon's name, Abazu, in Hebrew. Clyde suddenly feels numbness spreading through his arm. A fierce wind blinds Clyde momentarily, his eyes clouding over. A supernatural force slams him against the wall. The lights flicker ominously. Clyde begins to choke as a hand starts emerging from his mouth. The Dybbuk retreats into the box, leaving Clyde gasping for air. Clyde and Em embrace, their bond stronger than ever. To prevent the box from causing further harm, Tzadok decides to return the Dibbuk Box to the synagogue for sealing. However, on the way back, A sudden car accident leaves the exorcist's vehicle overturned. The Dibbuk box rolls away from the crash, untouched. The box waits ominously for its next unsuspecting victim. Sometimes the most innocent-looking objects can hide the darkest secrets. That's the end of the story. See you next time.